Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to an IDIPAT webinar. Just a few things, please, to help you with the presentation. Switch to presenter view. Please, we'd welcome questions coming in from the conversation panel from you guys, and we'll try and answer during or towards the end of the webinar. And obviously, make sure your speakers are turned on. Then you can hear us, and hopefully that will allow you to enjoy it. So, with no more ado, I'll start. So today's webinar is about late stage customized packaging or personalized packaging, and talking about it, what is it? So good afternoon, my name's Chris Waterhouse. I'd like to welcome you to the third of the winter series, the IDIPAT winter series of webinars. We'll be talking about late stage customization. What is it, the benefits, the opportunities that are associated with that, and what strategic manufacturing and supply chain approaches might be adopted. Additionally, we'll briefly talk about some of the technology approaches and some of the challenges we faced in adding some of these types of systems with our clients, and how we've addressed those through the adoption process. I'll also wrap up with a bit of a case study later on. So, a little bit about IDIPAT very briefly. So we are a supply chain packaging consultancy. We're based in Petersfield, Hampshire, in the UK. It's about 45 miles from Heathrow, so very easy to get into Europe and around the globe. Working for multiple companies, ranging in size, multinationals such as BASF, GlaxoSmithKline, Syngenta, but also smaller local companies that are challenging us in different ways. So we understand through a wide client base the different types of solutions that are appropriate, the challenges in terms of cash, in terms of investment, and the sort of challenges that those businesses face. So we like to think we can offer a nice and sensible co-opted type service, optimized for the different clients, to deliver these pragmatically engineered solutions. So what is late stage customization? So many times ago, customization, what is it? Is engraving, those sorts of things. We're going to talk through some examples today. Some of the technology approaches, why is it growing in popularity, addressing smaller batch quantities, desire for the individual offer, what are all the different things that are driving this approach, which is so hot at the moment. We're going to talk about some current examples, the benefits to the brands. We'll talk about Smirnoff, and we'll talk Absolute, we'll talk Coca-Cola, those sorts of things, and also Oreo and biscuits and cars and one or two other things as well. We're also going to, as I said earlier, we're going to look through the technologies, and we'll look at a quick case study where we've done some work, a particular case where we did some work that allowed us to develop the technologies, the digital print, the back office type work in delivering those sorts of solutions. So hopefully it should be enjoyable for you. So what is a definition of late stage? Number of people adopt it, different type wordings. This is our take on it. It's a strategic approach. Allows the business or a business to deliver differentiation in the marketplace at different levels in the marketplace, depending on the drivers in your business. Also creating at the same time flexibility in the manufacturing and the supply chain. At the end of the day, adopting these sorts of technologies is potentially expensive, and it has to make sense in terms of the investments. So creating the flexibility is an important part of the whole story. So what is it fundamentally? Isations is a phrase that kind of pops up at the end of everything. It could be randomization. People use the word randomization. It could be personalization. It could be individualization. It could be localization. Late stage customization, of course. But fundamentally, a lot of this is driven by the desire to create difference, to create the optimized brand image, but also to create a postponement strategy, driving the actual conversion of your product as late as possible in the supply chain, moving it down and down the supply chain so you can get this optimized solution. Many different types of approach. As you can see there on the images there, you've got the Smirnoff, which is a randomization, within the supply chain. Absolute Vodka, similar type thing. Different technologies adopted. You've got Nutella there, again, really quite interesting. Lots of different designs driven by lots of different things. Coca-Cola we all know so much about in terms of its name of Coke, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. We've also got some more examples there where people are, Nivea for example there, actually developing and delivering a custom pot for lip balms and those sorts of things, driven in store in actual fact. So it's right down the supply chain. And then finally we have an example there, the Oreos. Great little case study that, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but fundamentally IT through the internet delivering a customized pack, relatively expensive pack actually, to the marketplace, something that would typically cost $2.99, actually being delivered at a much higher value through the supply chain, creating the knowledge and understanding that value add through personalisation, through customisation, is a real value to the business, to the brand. So, black to individualisation. So, a good friend of ours, Henry Ford, friend of some of the older members of the team anyway. You can have, he famously said, you can have any car, a car painted in any colour you want as long as it's black. Clearly, that does not fit at all with today's approach, the technologies that are available, the demands of differentiation. So we've got the Nutella, people want their names on it. You've got the Snickers bars, which is creating a link back perhaps to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Kit Kat, which have done a great new brand launch with individual photos, individualization. You've got basketballs there, painted and coloured and individualized, and other pots and bits and pieces. And at the end of the day, what is driving this is the desire to be an individual, isn't it? We're all individuals. We're all different. We all have different desires, different needs. We like different colours. So actually, the ability to create this individualisation through the supply chain presents challenges. And at the end of the day, by developing systems, technologies, back office within this, it's important that we create this in a way that's manageable. So creating what we call the postponement rake, which is a garden rake, keeping everything straight through the handle of the device, of the tool, and then actually you start to expand massively at that point, at the end of the supply chain where it's being delivered to the customer. So, in practical terms, why are we doing this? So, what we're doing is because there's a fundamental increase in the desire for small production batches. Shorter lead times, smaller batches. Now this presents huge challenges to the inventory in the supply chain, the cost of supply chain, and all those sorts of things. The global trends of e-commerce are going to exacerbate this particular problem. How do we deal with it? We start to look at how things move forward. So today we've got the average batch size. The average batch size, it's kind of a good size. It's changing, smaller batches as it moves forward. But as we move further down the average batch size to less and less and less, the costs are accelerating. The costs are getting ridiculous. How do we manage this as a supply chain organizations? Because actually, what's going to happen in the future, the costs are going to get worse unless we do something about it. And that tail at the right-hand side there, we're going to create, I think we'll try the technology here. So we have the technology through this area here that actually creates more and more of a tail. How do we do it? There's more and more to be done in this area. The impacts are, as I said, increased costs. Manufacturing process currently are no longer fit for purpose. That's the ultimate. If you follow the logic all the way through, current manufacturing isn't fit for purpose. We want to develop lean, but this is beyond lean, because actually we're reducing capacity, we're losing capacity all the time by smaller and smaller batch sizes through changeovers, and we lose that capability. We fail to deliver fundamentally what the customer of 2018 is asking for. So the batches are getting smaller. One pack, one label, one batch. Is that the ultimate? Is that personalisation? I think it probably is, to be honest. So the technology approaches. So we have a number of different approaches, and at the end of the day, I've tried to reduce it down into sort of manageable chunks. We have the approach number one. We've got digital print, reel to reel, for labels, for cartons, those sorts of things, and then it's used for subsequent reuse. So it's reel to reel, create the reel, and then move that, and it could be sleeves as well, move that onto a production line, which is then used. Okay, but the digital approach gives us an opportunity to create lots and lots of different designs, serialized packs, those sorts of things. The second approach, digital approach, direct print online. That gives us huge flexibility potentially. Difficult technology is becoming available, but those sorts of technologies give us the opportunity to create individual packs online as we move forward, giving us aerosols, glass, tubes, cans. They're all available now as direct print online as an approach. The next one is a direct print to a substrate for application direct online. So the actual printing of the label, printing of the sleeve, those sorts of things, it's actually print to label on the substrate, which is then applied on the final pack, the primary pack. Used to be used many years ago for simple approach, thermal transfer type technologies, for print and apply labeling, pallet and shippers. But that's now moved into CMYK. That's moved into much more flexible type technologies, and indeed lots of other colours as well, different finishes. And indeed is also being looked at for braille print for the pharmaceutical businesses as well. All available online potentially, relatively cost effective and hugely flexible. The final one is pre-printing for subsequent use. That's randomization within the pre-print. Could be on bottles, as Absolute have done, and various other places, and then I'll put it on the production line in a random form, obviously, but they're pre-printed for subsequent reuse. We also have demonstrated there the Bud Light, which is the team type approach. So it's the team from the American football leagues, American football, yes. So the late stage requires that existing processes are decoupled in many cases. And depending on how you want to deal with your approach, it depends on where you want to decouple. But they all need reconfiguring. Important to recognise as well that this does not necessarily mean that existing equipment can no longer be used. It entirely can be used going forward, but will need reconfiguring, as I mentioned, within the supply chain. So short-run batches, entirely available. So the benefits of adopting this approach. So what does it give the business, the consumer, the supply chain? So it gives the brand, it gives this connection. Huge amount of opportunity there. Gives the interaction with the consumer. It delivers that differentiation which we're all looking for, and provides significant opportunities for value add. To use the Oreo example, we understand that it was a $2.99 normal retail pack in the supermarket, $2.99. That was the contents. When they put it through the internet, through the Oreo interface, the price of the pack at that point, having decorated it yourself, so all the colouring was done, it was kind of painted by numbers type approach, the pack cost was $10.99. $10.99 for a $2.99 pack. So immediately there's an opportunity. But on top of that, of course, because you have to deliver it now, it's not from a supermarket, it's a $5 delivery charge. So actually we're looking at a pack of about $16. And interestingly, as the consumers went through this particular value add approach, there was something like a 97-98% conversion rate. So people that went through this colouring in process actually committed to buy the box of Oreos. And interestingly enough, further, the average purchase was around 2.5 packs. So the 2.5 packs, looking at a price of $16, we're looking at a $40 spend on average. It's a massive value add for something that actually costs $8-9. My maths isn't very good. So it's a massive value add, demonstrating that the value that individuals put on a personalised pack. Hence the reason for the personalisation drive. So the consumer gets that ownership. You become an owner of an item, your item. You're being individual. It provides from the brand to the consumer a unique item, which we value. And it enhances the user experience, creating brand loyalty. And in the supply chain, of course, unless we manage that, we get the opportunity with the right technologies, building those technologies in, we get cost management and reductions potentially. We get flexibility, allows us to manage these small batches, the tail on our supply chain, the SKU list. It creates responsiveness. The responsiveness is hugely important to the supply chain of today. And it allows us, most importantly, we can manage complexity. That panacea for the supply chain. We can manage complexity rather than to try and reduce the portfolio, reduce the number of SKUs. We can say, hey guys, hey marketing, we can give you what you want cost effectively, and we can manage that complexity. It's not suitable for everything. It's potentially niche, but you know what? Moving forward, that complexity management is going to become ever more important. So, a little bit more about the brand. So, Coca-Cola, Share a Coke. Launched initially in Australia in 2011. When it was moved to the US in 2014, proved to be quite a hit. It helped the brand grow sales volume that year for the first time since 2000, the year 2000, which is a major thing for a brand which is so synonymous with the US, with the beverage market. Huge growth. Pharmaceuticals. Treating as individuals connects the therapy and the patient to increase levels of patient adherence, or the adherence levels within the therapy group. By driving that upwards, the numbers, as one of my previous seminars or webinars, the numbers are potentially fantastic. Many, many billions achieved through clever and novel connection of adherence through to the patient moving forward. That gives you that growth without having to invest apart from in some packaging and some technology. It's not for everything. It's not for necessarily for your anodins and your ibuprofens and the sort of more standard over the counter type drugs. But certainly as you move up the therapeutic scale, there are certainly opportunities that when identified can result in significant growth in the therapy without increasing overhead, particularly apart from the packaging system and the technologies within. You're using assets to create more sales in that therapy area. And finally, consumer goods. It's a unique item. You know, getting your iPod, your iPad or your iPod, engrave your iPhone, putting a new case on it. This technology is around there and people are adopting it because they like to be different. So personalisation lets your customers know when you're supplying it as a brand that you're paying attention to them. Alternatively, by dragging it in through other routes, it increases sales, increases brand loyalty, and connects the brand, as I said, to the customer, or the brand to the customer quite readily. So the consumer, what does the consumer get out of this? So it says to the brand, I'm part of the team. I belong. It's my football team. It's my American football team, whatever. It creates that interaction, B2C. Huge opportunity there, because consumers are often talking to supermarkets. They're not always talking direct to the brand. And creating that connectivity between is hugely important, and creating that personalisation, that brand loyalty, very important. It also says I'm unique, I'm different. You know, I want the latest design of that Lamborghini, which, to be fair, looks a bit garish. But then again, if you own a Lamborghini, probably that's your thing. Putting the case on the iPhone or your mobile phone, it gives you that ownership. It gives you a good thing. We're willing to pay for that value add, and it's important to understand the psychology. It's nice, for instance, to receive a unique handwritten letter. Not a tax demand, I accept, but it does make you feel special. You know, you're a person, you're an individual. It translates into other fields. You know, the drinks from Coke, the consumer electronics with a name, a cosmetics pack with a special message for a particular celebrated period, you know, Mother's Day, Father's Day, or whatever it happens to be. The custom car for the kiddie and the playing, you know, remote control cars. And the consumer will pay for all these things. They'll pay for the one-offs, the personalised number. We all do it now. Personalised number plates or whatever it happens to be. It's not a new phenomenon, because the capability for mass customisation has existed for quite some time. Even, you know, junk mail, you know, the name is on the print. But what we've got to do now is bring it into the packaging world, bring it into the world of the brand, and actually do it cost effectively to manage that complexity. Otherwise, it becomes a burden, and that's something we don't need. So, a little bit more in terms of the supply chain perspective for the business. So developing a strategy is key. You've got to maintain that flexibility. The macro trend is more and more smaller batches. Over time, this problem will grow. There are many isation approaches. There are many approaches. Not one size to fit all. The isolation takes place, and what technology is used needs full assessment. It's really very important, and it needs to be suitable for your particular business. The approach for a chocolate bar, for example, is different from a B2B business. A great strategic approach differentiates the business going forward and will create loyalty with the customer, be it a B2B scenario, be it a B2C type scenario. And the supply chain can deliver the brand desire rather than resist, has been the historical approach. And we can do it cost effectively. Hugely important, hugely beneficial. And the differences and where we see things, alcohol, high-end alcohol, hugely interesting, high value stuff, but once you start adding in different labels, different packaging systems, all very important to the consumer. It makes them feel special. So a short case study, bunch of pictures on there, I apologise for that. So we had a project a little while back. The pharma business in itself was, it was actually struggling to access some markets in it was Eastern Europe in particular and Asia Pacific. Relatively small markets, established markets though, and the volumes required in those markets were very small. But they were getting growth. The particular therapy area was important to them. They were gaining growth. They were getting increased complexity as the markets were accessed. The manufacturing costs were going up. As a consequence, with the smaller batch sizes with those types of markets, they were having to contract out volume. So the volume was going out to subcontractors, and that was creating a problem in terms of supply chain cost and those sorts of things. They also had issues with the generic competition and counterfeiting, pirate productions, those sorts of things, refilling. Lots of issues. So we were engaged, and the start point was we need to move to a digital approach. Okay, it wasn't really actually the solution in the end. The net result was that we moved from a conventional type of pack, a carton. We moved into a changed secondary pack format, which was more suitable for digital print at that particular time. We changed the internal processes, and what we managed to do is move from something like 150 printed components down to 3 components, which were unprinted. What that created for us as a business, or for the clients as a business, it gave them flexibility in the supply chain. They didn't have to worry so much about their forecasting. Excuse me. Their forecasting and their approach could be more flexible, to be perfectly honest. They were able to respond much better because the lines weren't waiting for printed components. They were held in digital format. And once the formats were created, we were able to deliver at very, very short notice the latest Hungarian or Polish version in very small quantities as well, highly cost effectively. Didn't really affect the product itself. In fact, out of that, we created a number of the benefits. So the structural pack design was changed, the secondary pack, so the primary packs weren't affected. And we moved from what was a 3D object, I'll call it a 3D object at that time, to what we created was a 2D surface, which allowed us to use the digital capability. Latest inline manufacturing techniques at that particular time. Things have moved on from there. And it gave us that appropriate filling and packaging capability suitable for this particular business. And the benefits were increasing in flexibility, increasing responsiveness, reductions in cost, and the contract manufacture volumes also dropped. It also created a massive reduction in counterfeit activity, giving the consumers, the patients in those markets, the confidence that the brand was looking after them, confidence that the brand and the product was actually producing the right outcomes, which was life-saving type approach. And as I say, we reduced the supply chain complexity significantly within the client to give us a lot of flexibility, a lot of improvement. The investment on the equipment that was installed was about 4 months. And on top of that, the contract manufacture volumes dropped so significantly they stopped contract manufacturing because the capability within the lines, the capability and capacity within the lines increased so much because the changeovers were so much shorter. Hugely important, real life-changing stuff for the business. The major challenges, however, conscious of time, So the choice of the technology, which technology, the technology on cost, where do you install the technology, where does the technology fit? Then looking at the technology capability, what are the substrates you need? The inks, food needs low migration inks, those sorts of things, pharmaceutical as well. We need to be able to create 2D surfaces that can be printed sensibly through either robot manipulation or through changes in the structural pack in the packaging system, which allows us to create benefit. The speed as well, much higher than people suggest in these sorts of environments. So generally the speed on our filling and packing line is not really affected by the vagaries of the digital print and other technologies we use. The accuracy of the print, how to check it, how to use cameras, those sorts of things. The print integrity, the quality, all much, much improved compared to how it was 3 or 4 years ago. I wouldn't be saying this to you, I wouldn't have said this to you 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It wouldn't be capable. Capability wouldn't have existed. Now, however, they exist, and it's capable, and the ideas and the thinking that was put forward at that time, which was rejected because of technology failures, actually can be delivered quite readily these days. So in terms of a conclusion, is there a golden bullet? The answer is no, there isn't, to be perfectly honest. There isn't one. There's not a single golden bullet. But what we can do is start to understand the need. We can start to understand the technical capabilities required and that are available, not always expensive in terms of capital expenditure. We can think differently about the approach we take and the innovation that will deliver the brand need. That's hugely important. Personalisation has its place as part of the strategic business mix. There's no doubt about it. It will not be niche forever either. So personalisation or any of these isations, postponement, which makes life a little bit easier, that's a huge technology, huge capability that most businesses will need at some point and will need to take forward. That's me. Thank you for your time. I've hopefully hit the point. This webinar will be actually able to view. You'll be able to view it on the website. Register on the website after this. Looking at some questions, we have a couple of questions. George has sent in a question. Could you explain a little bit more about how you see the future developing in terms of direct container print, digital, and the use of vloggers and e-commerce? Right, okay. So direct container print, massive area, presenting the opportunities in terms of glass print, tube print, those sorts of things. But also what it's doing, it's giving us the opportunity to deliver e-commerce type scenarios. Cars now, interiors of cars, dashboards, those sorts of things, non-packaging type things are all available now. But the use of V-bloggers or vloggers, as people talk about it, so those in the know on YouTube and such like, the use of these sorts of things are developing a capability, an understanding of the capability, and it's driving through the e-commerce route the opportunity for the brands to get close to the consumer. So you're actually connecting more closely. You start to create this interaction, the loyalty, the brand loyalty, and the e-commerce takes you further down the track of the one batch, one pack. You know, every batch is a single unit. Delivering that to give the retail experience that folks are looking for in an online experience at those sorts of sensible costs is going to be a challenge to business. And actually working through those, and we have been doing some projects on the same sort of thing, delivering the e-commerce, the unboxing experience in e-commerce that the retail experience is created at a one batch, one unit type approach. Hugely important, hugely exciting technologies, and can be delivered quite readily. Okay, we have one from Chris actually, namesake. So, how long does a typical program take going forward? Okay, how long is your piece of string is the reality. It depends what you want to do. You can move quite readily into a relatively simple approach. With a relatively simple type system, pharmaceuticals, installing digital print, full digital print on a blister line, for example, it's relatively simple. There's all the back office work and the quality checks, but relatively speaking, it's relatively simple. The more complex you get, the more difficult you get, it adds cost, and that's the challenge. But it depends on how you get it's defining the need. That's the most important thing. You get it working right, you develop the confidence, and then grow as the business starts to move forward. Okay, final. All right, that was it. Okay. So this particular webinar, last of our winter series, they are all available on our website. As it stands at the minute, we're working on the spring series. We'll have some more days on that, which we'll publish late in the next few months. It will be front of mind stuff. It will be relevant. At the same time, if there are any subjects you're interested in our views upon, reach out to us and we'll see if we can't incorporate those thinking and those thoughts into our program. So thank you so much. I wish you a good afternoon. Have a great day. Thanks for your time.